Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Democratic Newsroom. It's the final stretch of the big Maharashtra campaign, the big election that looms in front of us. And today on this episode, the Democratic Newsroom gets out of the newsroom, or at least half of it, because the biggest political team is on the ground in the state of poll-bound Maharashtra. So on today's episode, we're asking who has the edge. Are there any signs on the ground? Are things looking like they could turn one way or the other? From the ground, we have Sahil Joshi, our Mumbai bureau head, Preeti Chaudhary, executive editor, who's been crisscrossing around Maharashtra. Rajdeep will be with us in just a moment. Rahul Kanwal has landed the most watched interviews by all the big newsmakers from Maharashtra. Siddharth Zarabi has been decoding many of the big factors that could be at play in this upcoming election. Welcome to all of you. Rajdeep will plug in just a moment. Sahil, I'll kick things off with you. You know, the words Hawa, Andhi, etc. are words that we've seen used in elections gone by. Everyone has opined that this could be a tight fight, most certainly an interesting one. But very quickly, Sahil, kick it off, lay the ground for us. How are things looking? Who has the edge?
Well, before the election campaign start, the situation was completely different because whatever happened in Maharashtra in 2022 and 2023, after that, there was a certain mood in Maharashtra, and which was resulted in the results which the Maharashtra saw in Lok Sabha elections 2024. It was completely unexpected for the BJP and the Mahayuti. They were thinking that their arithmetic is in the right place and they will be able to win over the Maharashtra voters again, but which could not happen. So they were in dire need to search for an alternative to the whole narrative which was built up by Mahavikas Aghadi, that how the BJP is responsible for breaking up the political parties, creating a certain political situation in Maharashtra, which is completely against the ethos of the Maharashtra social structure, political structure, and people's the way people look at the politics. But after that, then they realize that what they have in their hand is basically the government, the state government as well as the central government. You know, they can pump in how much ever money they want, and that's how they started to counter the narrative which was built up in favor of Mahavikas Aghadi in the Lok Sabha elections 2024. And of course, when they want to do that, they chose the tried and tested method of Ladki Bahin scheme, the scheme which gives 1,500 rupees to a woman who is supposed to be a voter, because there is no data which can clearly confirm that the women who have received that particular amount, it clearly has is also registered as a voters, but majority of them must be voters. So they went with the tried and tested scheme. Then they announced various schemes one after the other, because immediately after that the budget of Maharashtra was supposed to be
But are you seeing an edge one way or the other, Sahil?
By Ajit Pawar, the finance minister. So basically, because of that, now Mahayuti is equipped with a counter narrative that, look, our government can deliver, our government can give you money, our government can give you ESOPs, and our government, look at the advertisements by the Mahayuti. The first thing they start is that if the new government comes, there is a possibility that the schemes which the Mahayuti government started in last 2 months will be shut down, and that is the reason why they should be voting for Mahayuti. So now, what they have managed by all these things is that to confuse the voter which was clearly linking towards a little bit towards Mahavikas Aghadi is now confused. Again, I can see that there is at least 15 to 20% of floating voter in Maharashtra which is going to decide, who is going to decide the fate of Mahayuti or Mahavikas Aghadi.
Preeti, you've been traveling there for a few days now. You've been on the ground. Are things looking like they're more one way or the other?
You know, Shiv, there's a lot of talk here that this election is more about Mahol, less about Mahol and more about management. But I'll just tell you, as a reporter, as a journalist who's been on the ground, I can only tell you about the Mahol. I don't know how the management is going to take place. And I would only tell you, Shiv, of the areas that I've been to. I've traversed, possibly from the remotest corner of Vidarbha and to most of its districts. I have done a fair amount of reportage through Marathwada, in combined, they are about 108 seats. I am right now in the Pawar belt and we'd be traveling there tomorrow. But in these 108 seats, and Vidarbha is what they call this time, possibly the swing region of Maharashtra. It's always been. And what I see there, now, Shiv, old school linear reporting would suggest that there is still high amounts of anti-incumbency. When I walked into this election, there was a sense which came in from Haryana that the BJP, especially because, after 75 direct fights between the BJP and the Congress, 36 of them are in the Vidarbha region and a lot of them in Marathwada as well. So when you look at it, you came in thinking that the BJP is on a high. And what you see on ground is a lot of anti-incumbency. Words like bhav, words like, catchphrases like haq, you hear very, very often in the rural, backdrop of Vidarbha. And 80% of it is rural. MSPs, when they talk about bhav, is huge. I'll delve into that later when you come to me. Haq, what they keep saying, कि हमारा हक नहीं दे रहे, which is again where the crop and the pricing of the crop is concerned. You hear a lot, soya bean के तेल का भाव बढ़ गया, soya bean नहीं बढ़ी. You hear a lot of, of that. So, high amounts of anti-incumbency. Another word that you hear, Shiv, a lot is apaksh, independent. So, as a journalist, I would say the incumbent would be, this is just linear, straightforward, old school reporting on what I see on ground. The incumbent is on a back foot. Whether the anti-incumbency is going to be mopped up by independents is a big question. I can delve into the Ladki Bahin Yojana because I've traveled extensively and made it a point to actually go ahead and speak to as many women coming in from various caste fault lines, various backgrounds on what they have to say. I feel there's a contradiction to Ladki Bahin Yojana. It's doing really well in certain pockets. I'll explain later. And it's also strangely, Shiv, backfiring in certain pockets. And I'll tell you why. We'll come back to that.
If we have time, we will come back to Ladki Bahin Yojana because it is important. We've seen the, the way things have actually panned out, especially the mentions across campaign rallies as well. Before I come to Rahul and Siddharth, just so that we have that steady line with Rajdeep, who I can see has plugged in with us. Rajdeep, Hawa, Andhi, Tsunami were words that we heard mentioned during the election gone by. Are those words relevant at this point? I'm seriously asking. It's not a loaded question. I'm seriously asking, from the ground, you get a perspective, that cannot be replicated from a newsroom, no matter how democratic it is. What are you seeing on the ground? Are you seeing a Hawa one way or the other?
Shiv, this is what I would call Maharashtra's panchayat election or a municipal corporation election. Maharashtra hasn't had municipal corporation elections for 2.5 years. So all the issues that you would normally see in a municipal election or a panchayat election are in some way or the other playing out in what is an important Vidhan Sabha election. And that means it's hyper-local. That means it's virtually seat by seat. That means it's region by region. You could go to a Marathwada and Vidarbha and you could feel that soya bean is the political crop of the year that could damage the ruling party. You could go to a Marathwada and talk about Maratha reservation becoming a major issue, and it is a major issue. But if you are in Western Maharashtra, you recognize just how deep the seat-by-seat contest is. If you go to the urban areas, you realize how Ladki Bahin is giving an advantage to the ruling party. You go to Konkan, and you can see that Eknath Shinde is seen as someone who clearly has been able to transform his image over the last few months. So I think Maharashtra is like a mirror cracked. The only thing I will say is I do believe that the Mahayuti is better prepared for this election. They've used the last 4 months and the fact that the election got pushed back by a few weeks to their advantage. They worked, for example, among non-Ambedkarite Dalits. They worked among OBC groups. They worked a lot, to ensure that they can in some way contain rebels, put up independents when necessary. I think except for Sharad Pawar, the other two arms of the Mahavikas Aghadi, the Shiv Sena, UBT and the Congress have still to master the art of management. If they have any hope, the Congress in particular, it's because they have some strong local leaders in Vidarbha who can pull off seats on their own strength. And that's really the story of Maharashtra. Maharashtra is a state with local satraps. More and more people, I was in Satara today, and even Muslims say they will vote for the BJP. because they want to vote for Shivendra Raje Bhosle from the royal family that traces his descendants to Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. So this level of hyper-local politics is designed for pundits and pollsters to be completely pushed aside, and the politics will be determined, I think, by who's able to use their resources and their management well. As of now, my sense is the Mahayuti has been able to do it a bit better than Mahavikas Aghadi. Is that enough to go over the halfway mark? I'm not so sure. That will depend, I think, on a variety of factors, particularly independents and rebels, and what impact they have on this election. It's a crazy, multipolar, hyper-local election.
Rahul, apart from the big interviews, the most cited interviews this election season from Maharashtra that you've done, you've also been looking at the numbers, the data. When it's this hyperlocal, when it's this, much of a seat-by-seat fight, is there someone who is more battle-ready and prepared when it comes down to the finest numbers?
This election starts with the Mahavikas Aghadi in front and the Mahayuti trying to catch up. Remember, the Lok Sabha score was 30 versus 17. So almost by a factor of 2 in the Lok Sabha elections, the MVA was in front and the Mahayuti was behind them. From there, it is very clear that the Mahayutis run a sharper, brighter campaign. They've thrown in more money, they've got more resources, and therefore they've plugged the gap. Now, have they overtaken the Mahavikas Aghadi or have they come close? That's what we'll find out on the 23rd. But there are some very interesting insights which you can get by looking at the data. And the most important of all is not just the management, it's the sheer chemistry between the alliance partners. I'll show you the level of chemistry which was witnessed during the Lok Sabha elections. That will give you some insights into where things were. Last time, the people in Maharashtra were asked who they wanted to poll. So of all the votes that were won, let's start with the Shiv Sena. Last time, the Sena Uddhav Balasaheb Thackeray faction picked up 56% of the undivided Sena vote, whereas the Eknath Shinde Sena picked up 44% of the undivided Sena vote. So it was 56 versus 44. A reasonably tight fight with Uddhav's party having a 10% lead. If you look at the votes of the undivided NCP, Sharad Pawar's faction won 3/4 of the undivided NCP vote, bagging about 74% of what was the earlier NCP, when it was unified, the amount of votes that they used to get, whereas the Ajit Pawar faction picked up only 26% of the vote, which made it very clear in the Lok Sabha, voters thought Sharad Pawar was the real NCP. But that could change because, unlike in the Lok Sabha, in the Vidhan Sabha, Ajit Pawar's party has a lot of formidable candidates. They're fighting fewer seats, just above 50, and they're formidable candidates on the ground. Net, when I calculated index of alliance chemistry, who's able to transfer votes to candidates fighting on, for example, do Sena voters vote for an Ajit Pawar candidate or a Sharad Pawar candidate if their man is not on the ticket? That's really what alliance of chemistry is all about. The chemistry of the alliance is all about. Here, the Mahavikas Aghadi had a 79% chemistry, which means if there were 100 votes of the undivided factions, when taken together, 79% was the level of chemistry of the Mahavikas Aghadi. The Mahayuti had a 64% chemistry. Now, the fact is, Shiv, that Messrs. Modi and Shah have seen this data very closely, and they've responded and reacted like they did in Maharashtra. So the real question is, how much ground have they been able to cover, and have they been able to overtake the Mahavikas Aghadi?
This is all after the Lok Sabha.
I'm saying this is what happened during the Lok Sabha.
Yeah.
They've studied the data. So, they didn't know because there's 6 parties fighting this election. Suddenly it hits you. Then you have a baseline to look at. And they've been, when we were in Maharashtra recently, it was very clear they were making an effort to try and plug these gaps. What is the extent to which these gaps have been plugged? If anybody says he's figured it out, it hasn't, because, as Rajdeep mentioned, it's a very seat-by-seat election. These things will, like in the Trump election, it looks like there's a wave, but actually the wave is a combination of a lot of small drops, which ultimately become that bigger wave.
Are you seeing a pattern as well, Siddharth? What have you been seeing as you study traction from both sides?
No, and also, Siddharth, from the market's perspective, and since Bombay is where all commerce and industry is, what are the expectations in the circles in which you're talking and traveling about how they're looking at this election?
I'll try to keep the answer short. Number one, Maharashtra's economy is larger than that of Nepal. It's the largest state in economic terms in India. It is the second largest by population. It is the third largest by geography. It is number one by slum population as a proportion. And that is by 13-year-old data. If we were to do a modern data, that would be even higher. Let's just focus on one bit. 50,000 crore of a full year expenditure on Ladki Bahin. Now, while our colleagues have been talking about the impact, and I noticed Preeti spoke about, how it may have a certain rebound effect in certain areas, let's look at the economic breakup. Maharashtra still is the most industrialized state. Its growth rate has slipped, but that could be due to different factors. Gujarat is coming up. Yes, there is a Gujarat factor play out. Maharashtra is the financial capital. Gujarat, Ahmedabad, Gift City is trying, but it will take many years, just like the bullet train rollout. The key factor is that agriculture is the weakest part of Maharashtra's economy. Maharashtra's services and industry sector are higher than the national average. It's much higher than even Tamil Nadu. So the design of the Ladki Bahin Yojana is perhaps keeping in mind the rural agricultural farm distress. And within that, if you look at the coverage, it has the widest span of coverage, 20 to 60, 21 to 65. The eligibility of the women will therefore cut across caste lines. It will cut across religious lines. It will cut across regional lines. And in those pockets which are more agriculture department, remember, agriculture produce, including of non-MSP crops from Maharashtra, is also amongst the highest. It will have a huge political impact. That's what some people have been telling me on the ground. Remember, only 2 installments have gone so far, but the promise is bigger.
Rajdeep, you want to come in on that point? Yeah.
No, I think, one of the reality checks of Maharashtra, and it is something that I saw 30 years after having traveled. I used to travel more extensively earlier, but again, please do not see Maharashtra as Siddharth just saw through the lens of Mumbai, Nashik and Pune. Move away from that. And there are parts of Maharashtra where the economic and social indices are worse than Bihar, are like a Bimaru state. Go
Which
to
is why, Rajdeep, I'm saying that it will cut across the regional divide.
Company. The biggest problem of the fragmentation which we are seeing in politics is also partly a fragmentation of the social and economic map of Maharashtra. That's why Marathas are demanding reservations. Young Marathas in Bid have no jobs. They've got to go as agriculture laborers and work in cane cutting in Sangli.
Rajdeep, may I just add one point? Surjit Bhalla's... Sir, just one small point. Surjit Bhalla's recent paper also acknowledges the point you are saying. Rural poverty is deeper than the national average in Maharashtra. I endorse that point. All I'm saying is the Ladki Bahin Yojana seems to have been designed to overcome that in political terms.
The irony that I found, you're right, but the irony I found is Ladki Bahin seems to strike a higher chord in urban and semi-urban pockets than rural. Why?
Because higher slum population as well.
The woman is more deeply linked to her husband. They feel they have not got, as agriculturists, they have not got the minimum support price they want for soya bean. Another fact, soya bean covers more acreage, more hectares in Maharashtra than sugarcane or cotton. Whenever there is a debate on politics in Maharashtra, it's on sugarcane and cotton. Soya bean is the most important crop in Maharashtra in 68 constituencies, mainly across Vidarbha and Marathwada. If the MVA has any chance, it is because of soya bean. Rahul Gandhi comes to Maharashtra and talks again of constitution. He's got the narrative badly wrong. He should be telling us what is his party going to do for soya bean. That's what the Congress... On the other hand, the Mahayuti is at least tapping the right narrative by recognizing that Ladki Bahin may give it some incremental advantage. Now, my limited point is Maharashtra's rural distress is real. That is what, as Preeti rightly said, is leading to some element of anti-incumbency. On the other hand, the fact that the Shinde government recognized that, moved in with these welfare measures, you can call them whatever you want, Revdi or whatever, but they are making some small impact, and in a tough election, they can also be a game changer. So, I mean, Maharashtra is far more, it's a mirror crack. I was just saying Yavatmal, there's just one denim factory of payments. Sahil is there.
Shiv, there's some interesting data which shows where Ladki Bahin stands. Just one is what you pick up anecdotally by speaking to people on the ground. The other is when C-Voter asked in its tracker for Maharashtra, which scheme registers the most? Which scheme launched by the state government is likely to attract voters. So if you see the Shetkari Yojana is just 10%, Lek Ladki is just 4%, Jan Arogya is just 8%, the Admi Awas Yojana is 2%, the Madrasa Modernization Scheme is just 0.2%. The one figure that pops out of this chart is the Ladki Bahin Yojana at 45%. This scheme is registering. And when we were looking at the tracking data for Jharkhand, it was similar, 49% there. So of all the, you can call it a freebie, popular scheme, welfare measure, call it what you will, this is the scheme that's leapt out and captured people's imagination. The only thing is that you've got the Mahavikas Aghadi promising an even higher allocation. So if I'm giving you one apple, the other party is willing to give you 2 apples. So does that then make you believe, okay, both are giving me the same thing? The other thing is that there was a certain amount of novelty initially when the first rounds came in. This is now being factored in, it's like roti kapda makan. Once you've got the basics, you aspire for more. So has this now reached a level where it's kind of been kha pi ke azam, we factored it in?
Rahul, there is a dependability Modi factor in terms of delivering social programs.
We're almost out of time, so I want to end with Sahil and Preeti. Yeah, Sahil and then Preeti. Sahil, go ahead on Ladki Bahin.
No, so I want to add one thing that Siddharth was mentioning certain numbers. The interesting thing is that the agriculture's contribution to the GDP of Maharashtra is almost 12%, but the people who are dependent on the agriculture are more than 50%. And here comes the point Rajdeep was trying to make. So is it enough? Is it enough to have IPL type auctioning of a voter, where one party says, ki, okay, 1500 rupiah, the other party gets up and says 3000 rupees. Is that enough to get the voters? It's something which is really crucial. So that's why there is the issue of the rural distress, there is the issue of the agriculture distress, which has not been looked at very seriously from the political point of view, and that's how it has become difficult to predict the Maharashtra elections, because if these 1500 rupees, the people are going to decide whether they are going to select a particular party, because they just started a scheme some 2-3 months back of whether they are going to wait and see what happens in the near future. Interestingly, after these 1500 rupees, the government did not stop, because they realized that the Mahavikas Aghadi is going to come up with a loan waiver, and that's how they immediately declared that even they will announce a loan waiver once they come to power. So that underlines that Ladki Bahin scheme is not enough. Otherwise, the additional promises wouldn't have been made. So we'll have to wait and see whether it actually has transformed into the numbers, or is it going to be only and only based on the rebel factors of the varial factors, the apaksha spread across Mahavikas Aghadi's against Mahavikas Aghadi.
Preeti, quick final word on this scheme. Last point by Preeti. Yes.
Shiv, one quick point. Rajdeep was saying that the Congress needs to say something about, the soya bean crop. Well, they just did, because they understand the impact of what soya bean, like they said, it's the biggest political crop this season. They have now promised, and it's in the middle of an election. Mr. Khadge just promised a short while back that Congress is going to start acquiring, or the Mahavikas Aghadi will start acquiring soya bean at 7,000 rupees per quintal. They want the message to be delivered in Vidarbha. Last point, Shiv, on the Ladki Bahin Yojana, where I told you, there's a contradiction to this scheme. It is backfiring. I was in Madhya Pradesh. I knew that the Ladki Bahin Yojana was working. I think we were one of the very few channels who reported that the BJP could, that this could be the BJP's trump card in Madhya Pradesh. Here, Shiv, the difference here is, statistically, we like to see women as this one big monolith. In Maharashtra, because the expanse of it, and in a way Rajdeep is right, Maharashtra really lives in its rural belt. I have spent 10 days now in Vidarbha, Shiv. You have to look at women not just as women who are getting 1,500 rupees. You have to look at some of these women as farmers. And yes, 12% agriculture adds to the GDP, over 50% population dependent on it. People are actually still claiming their lives in the area of Vidarbha from the lack of 70,000 rupees, Shiv. These women, when you speak with them, madat aa raha hai, but what you hear, jitna le rahe hain, double de rahe hain. But then the image picture changes when you go into maybe, Nagpur, Chandrapur, which is slightly better, semi-urban. The women there appreciate the 1,500 rupees which is coming in. So, will it be managed? I don't know. Mahal, I've reported.
Okay, we'll have to see how it goes. This is, after all, the final stretch. We're looking at voices, we're listening to voices, not so much the netas, the numbers as well. And that's what shapes India Today's coverage and makes us the Democratic Newsroom.
And that makes it more exciting. If it's obvious who's winning, then there's no fun. When there's uncertainty, then you need to watch India Today more often.
20th is polling. You'll have much more data on that day. On the 23rd is going to be results day with Rajdeep, Preeti, Rahul and the rest of our political team, both in Mumbai with Sahil and all of us here in the Democratic Newsroom. Thanks very much for watching.